Let me go over something in the news with you and tell you what's happening there. We're going to talk about prophecy. We can all have a seat. Let me tell you a little bit about prophecy, what's happening there. Now, what we've done initially, what we're going to do, we can sit. What we're going to do initially is tell you about prophecy and then go right into our Bible study. So let me tell you what's happening in the news this week so you understand. Let's talk about the New World Order. And before I get there, well, I'll do that a little bit later. New World Order. Listen to some of the things that are there. And again, I'm going to be reading some of these, so it takes a little bit of time, but I want you to get the gist of it. I will give you summations of some other ones. The buzz around the microchip implants was ratcheted up a notch recently with a demonstration at the World Mobile Congress. So they are demonstrating live microchip implants for bank payments. And I'll show it to you. This is what they're doing right now. They're putting in between the thumb and the hand and the wrist, and they are implanting them, and it's more than just opening doors. Listen to what it says. One of the volunteers, Edgar Pond, said he decided to have the RFID chip implanted under his skin because it contained credentials to open doors to his house. This chip is the size of a grain of sand or two, and it's covered with a material that's biocompatible to your body, so it actually molds into your body. During the presentation, organized by a bank, Sabodell, a man named Pau, who had already been fitted with the chip, made a payment. This is where it jumps a little bit more to what we're really talking about in Revelation. He made a payment by placing his smartphone over the skin covering the chip. So this is when we talk about the mark of the beast, we talk about not being able to buy or sell. You are taking a giant leap forward when you're taking this chip, and instead of accessing your computer, opening your doors, you're now making payments with it. At one time, the idea that large numbers of people would willingly allow themselves to have microchips implanted into their hands seemed all a bit crazy, but now it's become a reality. Thousands and thousands of tech enthusiasts all across Europe have already had microchips implanted. Now, a Swedish company is working with a very large global employers to implement this on a large corporate level. In fact, Biohacks recently, and you're going to hear that word over and over again, it's a company that's pushing this, recently told one of the biggest newspapers in the United Kingdom that they have been talking with a major financial service firm that has hundreds of thousands of employees. One prospective client, which cannot be named, is a major financial service firm with hundreds of thousands of employees, and for security-obsessed corporations, this sort of technology can appear to have a lot of upside. If all your employees are chipped, you'll always know where they are, and you'll always know who has access to sensitive areas or sensitive information. Obviously, governments are going to want this, and that's exactly what leads into what John said in Revelation way back on the island of Patmos in 96 AD. He said that there's going to be a one world ruler, and he's going to control all the people in the world. He'll control what they buy, he controls what they sell. And so governments, this is the way that governments can control their people, and it's definitely something that is on the horizon. 20, 30 years ago, we talked about it, we theorized about it, but it was almost prophetic fiction because it didn't happen. There was nothing in the line to say. As a matter of fact, one of the things we were talking about 20 years ago was the barcode. How many remember that? We were thinking that was the mark of the beast. We are so far beyond that because now we are chipping people, and it actually is a spot where they can't buy or sell unless they have this. The chip implant is a secure way of ensuring, this says, that a person's digital identity is linked to their physical identity. Why? Because you can have a security badge, but you can lose that. It can be lost, it can be stolen, it can be forged. This cannot be. But if it comes down to a choice between getting the implant or losing your job, think about that. How many workers do you think would choose to become unemployed? Not a whole lot. The RFID chip actually started with our government. It's radio frequency identification device, and what it was is they would stamp it and put those chips on pallets of material that was inventory for the government. It quickly went to supermarkets, it quickly went to the retail stores, and now it's going to the hands of people. And so you ought to be able to have your spiritual antenna up and say, we are very, somebody asked me today, how close are we? We're very, very close. I have never seen this accelerate as fast as we can. I know we've been talking about that a long time. I know we've been talking about the Lord coming back a long time. But listen, every day we live, we're closer to the Lord coming back. And when we're seeing what's happening right now. So to me, it's a wow. Antichrist will no doubt use this technology. And no doubt this technology will continue to go on. John tells us of 2,000 years ago that there'll be an implant into your forehead or your hand. And so we're already seeing it in the hand. Let me give you a little bit more that's going on in the news. Talk about some of the government things that are happening. Trump said this the other day, seductive socialism would send country down the tubes in a decade or less. And he's absolutely right. He says he very strongly believes that the United States will not lean to socialism, but he says if it does, the United States will cease to exist in 10 years. And he's absolutely right. Socialism does not work. Socialism takes from the haves and gives to the have-nots. You need people who are making money in order for socialism to happen. So all the naysayers right now that are talking about socialism, and you'll see a little article later on tells you why they are, they don't understand that you need capitalism for socialism to exist. If you have no haves, you can't take from them and give to the have-nots. And so they can't generate those funds. And he's right. He's absolutely right. So as we continue on that line, here's another article, a separate one. More and more reports show, well, that one's going to come in later. More and more reports show that Obama administration spied on President Trump. One was an interview on March 2nd, which former Obama administration official Evelyn Farkas described to MSNBC how she urged former colleagues in government to save and spread as much information on Russia as they could before Trump came into office. She absolutely admitted that while they were trying to get something on Trump, so they collected as much as they possibly could on any collusion that he had with Russia. Although they didn't find a collusion, they wanted to make the connection. So they actually spied on Trump. Listen, if we had congressional hearings for all the people who did things that were wrong, you would see Hillary on the Hill for a long, long time. And you would see Obama on the Hill because he also did things like that. Let me give you this one. 50 college courses. This will tell you a little bit more how we're going in socialism. This is why. We know that Karl Marx said this, and so did Hitler, and so did Stalin. They quoted each other, that what you teach in schools today will actually become your law in 10 years. So our kids are the ones. Why are we now in the midst of millennials talking about socialism? Well, two reasons. Number one, they're not very smart. Amen. They haven't learned history. All you got to do is look at Venezuela and see if socialism is effective. Or you can look at Cuba and see if socialism works. It does not work. Secondly, they're being indoctrinated in our colleges. I'm going to say something that's kind of controversial, but I don't ever say anything like that. So let me just lay it out there. I'm not so sure it's smart to send your kid to college anymore. As a matter of fact, I think it's not very smart to send them to college, especially in America. Because American colleges are indoctrinating our kids into socialism and away from God. It's happening all over the place. Listen to this report that came out. 50 college courses that show American students' indoctrination into socialism. What in the world are they teaching to our young people? As you go through the list of college courses titles, I'm sure that many of you will be completely shocked, this says. Most parents assume that they're sending their children to college to get prepared for the future careers. But the truth is that a lot of our major colleges and universities have become little more than indoctrination centers for progressive thought. Our college students are literally being systematically trained to be socialists, and it's working. According to a brand new Harris poll that was just released, 47.2% of all Americans prefer living in a socialist country. I don't even know how you could state that, but for the millennials and Generation Z combined, that figure is 59%. That means that essentially over half of our young adults want to be socialists, and that has an enormous implication for the future of our society. So how did it happen? Well, the truth is that it really isn't a mystery. Progressives have a stranglehold on higher education in the United States, and they're training future generation of leaders to think just like them. Young American Foundation has just released this yearly report on the craziest college courses in America, and here are some examples of the 50. I won't read them all to you. At Harvard University, who is a fascist and why is it not wrong? Princeton, Karl Marx in the 21st century. Yale University, progressivism, theory and practice. University of Alabama, oppression and social justice. University of Florida, ecofeminism and great political thinkers Machiavelli to Marx. University of Missouri, promoting social justice, diversity, and inclusion capstone. Middlebury College, developing anti-racist and anti-capitalist feminists. These are courses that you get credit for. University of Minnesota, immigration to the United States should be beyond our walls. University of Minnesota, again, Marx for today. University of Minnesota, multi-gender fair curriculum. University of Iowa, introduction to social justice and working for social justice. Illinois, interrogating masculinity. In other words, we're not who we're thinking we are. Indiana University, looking like a feminist. University of Maryland, feminism. University of Michigan, eco-queer feminist art practices. Ohio State University, breaking the law, an introduction to gender justice. Penn State University, that's a proponent to tell you if you have your gender rights, you can break the law in order to protect your gender rights. Penn State University, Life and Thoughts of Malcolm X, makes me ashamed. Purdue University, Gender and Diversity in Management. University of Wisconsin, Transgender, a Historical Perspective. And Queering Sexuality Education. Williams College, Racial Capital and Global Warming and Environmental Change. We'll talk about that tonight. Amherst, Gender and Right-Wing Populism. Amherst, From Birth to Death, LGBTQ Life Trajectories. Swarthmore College, Queering God, Feminist and Queer Theology. Theology is the study of God. Queer theology, that's talking about queer as being godlike. It's a horrible course. How many of you are with me today? How many of you just, I mean, I don't know about you, but I get shocked. If I was sitting where you were sitting, my mouth would be down. Swarthmore College, Queering the Bible. Wesleyan College, no doubt they're going to use David and try to talk about him being a homosexual in that course. Trust me, this is what's going on in our colleges. Pomona University, Black Women, Feminism, and Social Change. Davidson College, Feminization of Poverty. Pomona College, Queering Childhood. Butler University, The Problem with God. DePaul University, Sexual Justice, Lesbians, Gays, and the Law. University of Pennsylvania, American Jesus. University of Pennsylvania, Womanism and Identity Politics in the Realm of Hip-Hop. And so even though the system of higher education has produced people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and millions of young radical leftists just like her, and even though she's been only in Congress for a little less than 2 months, she's already one of the most popular politicians in America. Unfortunately, she's tremendously disgusted with capitalism. In fact, according to NBC News, she just told a large crowd that capitalism cannot be redeemed and it's evil. Is this where the country is headed to? Well, America is losing its way amidst this socialism madness. The new alt-left mob, like insanity, is spinning a lie that capitalism is bad and that capitalists are bad. Capitalism has made us who we are as a country and as an economy and as a nation. It's pulled us out of poverty. The reason we're not a third world country is because we believe in capitalism, the free trade and free markets. I just don't understand it. Let me give you another one. This goes on just on the same level. Another article. 5 ways the Green New Deal exactly mirrors Agenda 2030. So they had a UN agenda that came out a little while ago, and it was called Agenda, did anybody know what it was called? Agenda 21. They thought by 2021 that the UN was going to be able to marshal the world together into one government and one purpose. Now they're calling it 2030. But make no mistake, it's the exact same thing as the Green New Deal. It has the exact same things that are in it. Ocasio-Cortez is just a naive poster woman for a sinister agenda about which she is ultimately clueless. She has been given an undue and exorbitant amount of media attention for a freshman congresswoman. She just won at 435, by the way. Not because she's intelligent or unique, because she's not, by the way, but because the people really pushing this agenda own the media and can dictate what the public focuses on. The truth is, the Green New Deal is no different than the plan to bring about a one-world government. I told you, one world order, via the UN, the United Nations. It's the same as Agenda 2030. Similarities, Green New Deal aims at changes being done by 2030. So does the Agenda 2030 of the UN. Second, sustainable energy for all. That means that everybody will have sustainable energy. That sounds great, but who's going to pay for it? What are we going to have to give up to get it? Privacy, autonomy? Are you going to have to live in a smart city owned and run by the government with 24/7, have meters watching you? Number 3, climate change is a threat. That is the biggest lie you will ever hear. I'm going to tell you about climate change tonight. There's a whole bunch of people purporting climate change, man-made climate change. Man is claiming changing the planet. That is absolutely a lie. We are not changing the climate. And repeat that for everybody that listens to me on YouTube. We are not changing the climate, and I will prove it to you with several articles today. The Green New Deal states that climate change constitutes a direct threat to the national security of the United States. You know where they're going with that, don't you? Agenda 2030 is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. Notice the term keeps changing from man-made global warming to man-made climate change to simply now climate change, to continue the charade. Of course the climate is changing. It's always been changing. I'll tell you why it's been changing. But most skeptics of the anthropogenic global warming, which is what it's called, readily admit that climate changes. It does change. The question is, how much is humanity causing it? That point is also, it cannot be scientifically be due to the minuscule amounts of CO2. Now listen closely, because if you don't know anything about science change and you miss the next article, you're going to still be in the dark if you miss the next statement. Listen to it. The point is that it cannot scientifically be due to the minuscule amounts of CO2 humanity exists. That's what they're telling us. We are giving too much CO2 and we're changing the climate. That is a bold-faced lie on a lot of levels. Note how both the Green New Deal and the Agenda 2030 make sure to get the propaganda in that we must rally around saving the environment in the process as a side effect. The Green New Deal spares no exaggeration by saying the climate is changed, a rise of 2 degrees Celsius, which causes mass migration from regions most affected by climate change and costs the United States $500 billion in lost annual years money. I'll get back to that later. Similarity 4, millions of magical high-paying jobs. You know what she says? And you know what the UN says? Everybody's going to have a very high-paying job. How are you going to do that? How are you going to have everybody have a large job? To create millions of good, I'm quoting, high-wage jobs in the United States. To provide unprecedented levels of prosperity and economic security for all peoples of the United States. That's the absolute opposite that socialism does. Socialism takes all the money. So the fifth one is central planning. The word mobilization is creepy and it's eerie, denotes some kind of central military-like authority with the power to mobilize citizens like troops, treat people like human resources, order them around, and put them to work on whatever projects it sees fit, all for the greater good of the collective. As the article, the Green New Deal plus modern monetary theory equals socialism, and that's what we're talking about. The conclusion, the Green New Deal sure smells like Agenda 2030. No matter how well intentioned, it's a rehash of an old plan to use threats to the environment, real or imagined, as a way to get people to rally behind a new world order. And that's exactly what John the Revelator tells us about, a new world order. Before I get to the next article on that, which is the last article, very good, let me tell you a little bit about Israel. Yesterday, there were two rockets, fired from Gaza into Tel Aviv. Now, Tel Aviv is a very populated city, a couple million people. There's varied reports. Hamas is not claiming that they did it. Islamic Jihad is not claiming they did it. They're the two factions in Gaza that hates Israel. Israel's still in negotiations with Hamas via Egypt. And so they're not claiming anything. Israel said the Iron Dome shot one down. Today they rescinded that, and they haven't told us a whole lot about it. They supposedly, both rockets fell in places that were uninhabited, which is kind of strange for me because Tel Aviv is it's like New York City. And so it's still kind of spurless on what's going on in the details. But they did say this. Every article I read said this. This is not about a war escalating. This is not. As a matter of fact, I have a group that I wrote that's going to Israel in the end of March, and so I'm sure they're going to be calling me tonight. And so it's not about that. It's not about a war escalating. This is something that's been done, maybe rogue, we don't know, but Israel's definitely prepared, and they're probably going to get to the culprits and do something probably drastic about it. Let me give you one of the most important things you're probably ever going to hear based on prophecy. And I want you to listen to all of this if you would, because it's very detailed and it'll explain things that really we don't get to explain a whole lot. It's not coming up, but we'll try to do that. There we go, it's off now. That comes back on. There we go. All right, so listen to this. Countdown to the red heifer. After years of hard work and preparation, the rabbi charged with overseeing the red heifer is now claiming that this biblical commandment is on the verge of reappearing. Rabbi Azariah Ariel goes on record explaining how the return of this ritual purification will change our lives. The Temple Institute in Jerusalem has been working on 3 decades, for 30 years, to educate the public and make practical steps to prepare for the third temple. So I did a little bit of chart hopping for you. There's the Al-Aqsa Mosque to the left. That's where it's believed that Muhammad took his winged flight to heaven on a winged horse. That's another fairy tale. There's the Dome of the Rock, 622 AD was put there. This is the site of Solomon's temple. This is the Eastern Gate. The third temple is believed to be put right here, parallel to the Eastern Gate. It's been drawn in on this slide, and you can see it. This is the Eastern Gate right here, the Golden Gate. This lines up perfectly with the third temple. Why was that important? Because right through here, there's going to have to be a sacrifice of the red heifer and her ashes on the Mount Olives. It is dictated in Scripture, and it's the only way that Israel can purify itself, with the ashes of the red heifer. Now, listen to it real well, because a lot of people hear that, but they don't understand it, and I really want you to come away with it knowing what's going on here. The commandment of the red heifer is described in the Old Testament in several places. Lacking a red heifer has left all of Israel ritually impure. The entire nation of Israel, every person in it, is impure today, according to rabbinic law, and unable to properly perform any of the major commandments, such as they can never, even if they build this, they can never offer a lamb sacrifice unless they purify the temple, and they purify the nation, and they purify themselves. So a red heifer is extremely important when we talk about the Antichrist coming back and that temple being there. They have to have a red heifer because they can't dedicate this. It would be an empty building that could do nothing with it. So let me just tell you a little bit more. The Temple Institute of Jerusalem has tasked Rabbi Ariel with supervising the effort to reestablish the essential Torah commandment. The Torah commands us to perform the mitzvah, which is a ritually pure condition. This is necessary for us to engage in anything that is holy or sanctified. It is important to understand that impurity is not any type of physical dirt or something else. For most ritual impurities, bathing in a mikveh is sufficient. So Jews do that even now. If they want to be pure, they go into a pure water bath. They go down one side and they come back to the other side. And there's a certain purity, but it is not a purity that we're talking about to dedicate temples and to dedicate nations. The higher level of impurity comes from contact with the dead, and to purify this condition, the ashes of the red heifer are required. So let me tell you, I've been on this 35-acre compound, and I've watched Muslims take their dead in coffins and parade them through here. This place, according to Jews, is extremely defiled. They have to purify it because basically there's dead that have crossed back and forth in here. If you're a Jew and you want to purify yourself and you go to a hospital, you know that you become ritually impure as soon as you're in that hospital, because some people have died in that hospital. You can't do anything with being pure unless you have, and be purified if you touch the dead, unless you have the ashes of the red heifer. Now, how many are still with me tonight? Okay, follow it on. It can happen if a person is inside a hospital where a dead person body is present. In such cases, the ashes of the red heifer are the only method of becoming ritually pure. Lacking the ashes of the red heifer, this condition remains forever, remain impure forever. The physical requirements for a red heifer are simple yet precise according to Scripture, and has led to an intense search for an exceedingly rare candidate. We know that there have been, listen to this, only 9 red heifers throughout the history of the Jews. That goes back 3700 BC. Only 9 of them. These are not easy to find. The first having been prepared in the times of Moses and Eleazar, son of Aaron. A red heifer is a female cow that's red. In the language of the Bible, red is not exclusively what we know it is today as red. It also includes brown and other similar shades of red, but it excludes black. And every single hair in its body must be the same color. Every single hair. The rabbi described in a recent case in which a calf was found to have 6 white hairs near its nose, which rendered it totally unfit. You would think it was a red heifer, but it had 6 white hairs, so it's unfit. The animal must also be 2 years old. There can be no blemish, no holes in the ear. Until that point, it is considered a calf and not a cow. At that point, the cow can be slaughtered and prepared. Though reinstating the temple service in its entirety is dependent on the return of the red heifer ritual, the ashes of the red heifer are prepared outside the temple on the Mount of Olives. It's not a sacrifice per se, so it's burned in an area outside the temple on the Mount of Olives. The ashes are collected, and a very tiny bit of the ashes are mixed with spring water and can be sprinkled on people in order to purify them. Only a very tiny bit, and you can add as much wood as you want to the fire. So what they do is they get all these ashes, and they take just a minuscule amount, they stick them in vast quantities of water, and in order to purify the land, purify the temple, purify people, all they have to do is sprinkle that water. One red heifer can last for 1,000 years. Because it's just the tiny bits of the ashes. They said that they had them when the second temple was there, but they put them away, but they lost them through all the conquering. So they haven't had a red heifer since 586 BC. Once they get a red heifer, Israel will be able to purify everything and everyone and their nation. So the lack of ashes from the red heifer has prevented us from performing many Torah commandments. He explained, for example, today when a Jew makes bread, they separate out a small amount for the mitzvah of hafarash, which is called separation out a quantity of dough for the priest. They're supposed to separate out a quantity for dough for the priests. In the Old Testament times, that's what fed the priests. So they'd sprinkle it with a little bit of water, with ashes of the red heifer, just water, and then they give it to the priest. Today, when they make their bread, the Hasidim, the Orthodox, they have to throw that piece away because they can't purify it. So the ashes of the red heifer are very, very important. And this week, they have come up with a pure, spotlessly pure red heifer. So that is probably one of the most important prophetic news articles you will ever hear. They are ready for temple sacrifice. And so, yeah, it's amazing. All right, let me give you a little bit more. As we see what's wars going on, we have a Shiite militia leader in Iraq threatening the United States. I'm not going to read it to you. I'll paraphrase it. We liberated Iraq, remember, from Saddam Hussein. That's the Old Testament of Syria. And so we liberated it, and people start selling dinars. You could get 100,000 dinar. Everybody was talking about them. They come to me and say, Pastor, should I buy some of these? They're backed by the American government. They're very, very cheap, 100,000 dinars for $10. I bought 1,000 dinar. I said, save your money. It's worthless. Because we think we can prop this government up, and we can't. Right now, there's militia that's threatening the United States in the nation that we liberated. And you know why? Because the Bible is specific about Ishmael. These are relatives of Ishmael. Ishmael will be a wild man, the Bible says in Genesis, and his hand will be set against his brothers. We are never going to stop the aggression in the Middle East. It's not going to happen. Only Jesus is going to bring peace to that area. So we're watching this nation we liberated now go right back to trying to threaten us. All right, let me give you a little bit more as we go quickly. Jesus said that our morals will decay, the love of many will wax cold. This article says, queer-theorying scholars confirm indoctrination goal of gay clubs in schools. So I won't read it to you, I'll give you a paraphrase. In Canada, they're having a problem. In America, it's the same type of thing. If you're in America and you want to have a Bible study in your school, you cannot have it run by a teacher. You have to have it run by a student. If you want to have a gay club in your school, you can do that. It's got to be run by a student. Well, in Catholic schools in Canada right now, the LGBT are starting to push teachers that are LGBT into schools. They're trying to get them to take their credentials to become teachers so that they can lead gay clubs. And they're being led in Catholic schools. Why Catholic? Because they get no government money and they don't have anything to lose, but they are pushing it in so that they can force the Catholic Church to make a stance against it. But what they're doing is they're indoctrinating kids into the gay lifestyle from the teachers, not from the students, but from the teachers. It's going to happen in America too. Let me give you a little bit more moral, okay? GOP. Anybody know what GOP stands for? Grand Old Party. What party is that? It's the Republican Party, okay? People many times say, what is GOP? It's Grand Old Party. GOP state lawmakers approve heartbeat abortion bans. Georgia and Tennessee joined a string of states moving to enact tough abortion restrictions when Republican House lawmakers passed bans on most abortions after a fetal heartbeat can be detected. So here is the backlash. We see the government, the federal government was making rules and statements and laws saying that you can abort a child once it's even born, right up to the day of birth. How many remember me telling you that? How many remember me telling you that? Well, states who are different, they're different bodies of law than the government. Supposedly states' rights can trump the government rights at certain times. States are saying now they're backlashing it. They're saying Republican lawmakers are going to their Congress and their state legislature, and they're putting in laws saying that you cannot kill a child, a baby, a fetus, if you hear a heartbeat. And that is 18 weeks. And so for 18 weeks, and after 18 weeks, it's considered murder. Seltzer, in his bill, seeks to recognize that a child in the womb that is living distinct from its mother has a right to life and is worthy of legal protection. The Tennessee House passed similar legislation early Thursday after its Republican supermajority forced to end the debate without letting any Democrats speak. Several other states, including Mississippi, Florida, Kentucky, Ohio, South Carolina, are also considering this type of legislation. That is a plus. You can give a hand to that for life. All right, just a couple more. You've heard of this one. Celebrities and wealthy parents charged by the FBI in college admission scheme. How many heard about it? Okay. The FBI on Tuesday charged dozens of wealthy parents, including celebrities Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman, in a major cheating and bribery scheme to get their children admitted into some of the nation's most elite colleges. Some of the colleges and schools included Georgetown, Yale, Stanford, University of Texas, University of Southern California, University of California, Los Angeles, and others. So there's this man, and there's more than him, by the way. This is just the tip of the iceberg. He's someone to help you facilitate your child to get accepted into a school. So the SATs are one of the big things. So what they've done is they've used the handicap law. There was a law passed in 1991 that if you're handicapped, you could have more time on the SATs. So they give you more time to finish the SATs, which is a college entrance examination. And so what you do is you apply for that, and when you apply for that being handicapped, they can give you a proctor. That proctor stands in the room with you, as opposed to you taking the SAT with another 30 kids. What that proctor has done is they've been paying these off. This is one part of it. Paying off the proctor. He's the one with you, and he gives you the answers, and you're not handicapped. So we have a lot of celebrities doing that. We also have celebrities paying from $50,000 to almost $1.5 million to bribe coaches to get their daughters and their children on athletic clubs that have never played the sports, whether it's tennis or rowing. They've never played. This is what's coming out. So you have a lot of colleges that are culpable. You have coaches that are culpable. And let me tell you something. Sooner or later, if this hammer really falls, they're going to have to kick those kids out of school because they lied on their admissions application. How many of you know that? It's only fair. If you have studied your whole life to go to college and somebody else gets in because they paid money. But here's the real thing that I think is unconscionable. These Hollywood stars, most of them, almost 90% of them, are Democratic liberals. These are the ones that tell us that everybody should have a fair shake in America. These are the ones that tell us that there should be an equality in America, yet they're using their money to make their kids not equal with someone. It's pretty ridiculous when you think about it, pretty hypocritical. So basically, you're going to see that really start to mount up. I promise you're at the tip of the iceberg. If this story comes out, you're going to see this happening all over the country. I am really disgusted with the college situation in America. It's paying. It's who you pay. And by the way, I also think some heads should roll from college presidents. Because they are not not knowing this. Some of this money is going to charity colleges. And so they're taking this money in to allow kids in that don't qualify. Those presidents should be forced to resign. All right, that's my spiel for today. Let me give you a little bit more. Last one. President Trump has now ordered a climate panel that could expose huge fraud. And again, this is big news. The collective freakout over President Donald Trump's proposed Presidential Committee on Climate Change, climate science, highlights the fact that the hysteria surrounding the man-made global warming hypothesis is unscientific, and that it must be re-examined by competent, credible experts. Here's what he said. I'm going to create a panel, he has done it already, of credible scientists to study climate change. Now you would think that the climate change proponents would say, wow, that's great, you'll finally prove what we're saying. They're up in arms. Why would they be up in arms? If scientists are going to check out if there's really, why would they be up in arms? They would welcome that, would they not? Well, what's happening is basically the Democrats, tax-funded climate alarmists, and the establishment media would all be celebrating, but they're not. They're all going nuts. They're going crazy that he's doing this. The hysteria first broke out last month in late February. Documents emerged showing that the White House was planning to create a committee of federal scientists. Their job, re-examine widely disputed conclusions on climate change by previous government bodies, especially problematic to the man-made global warming theorists, who was the prestigious scientist selected to lead the commission. This guy that's selected to meet the commission is the expert on climate in the entire United States. It's Princeton University physicist and National Security Advisor Dr. William Happer. And that's what really made them go nuts, because this guy is the ultimate authority. Happer is a widely respected scientist who happens to disagree with the increasingly discredited hypothesis that man's emissions of CO2, a fraction of 1% of all the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, control the climate. He says it doesn't. Here's what he says, I'm quoting. CO2 is good for the Earth, Happer told the New American magazine at 2016 climate conference in Phoenix, Arizona, that brought together leading scientists and experts in various fields to expose the lies and alarmism. Now, you wouldn't think that. Listening to the secular media, they make you think that you're an idiot because you don't believe in climate change. Well, let me tell you who the idiots are. The ones that are purporting climate change that's man-made. They're the idiots. Listen, if you look, he says, if you look at geological history, CO2 levels are unusually low right now. They're not even high, they're low. It is very seldom that they've been this low. Many plants are not growing as good as they could if they had more CO2. We need CO2 for photosynthesis. So CO2 by itself will be very good for the Earth, he says. More CO2 is always good for the Earth, not bad. He also said that it was pretty clear that we're not going to see dangerous climate change as a result of human CO2 emissions. So I read that, and I remembered something I read way back when. Actually, I read it in about 1975, right after I got saved, but it was in 1970. In 1970, they had the first Earth Day in April of 1970, the Earth Day, to save the planet. So I went back, and for you, everybody say thank you. Thank you. And I found the articles of what they stated in that first one. I'm just going to read you some of them. These are the statements that came out at First Earth Day that scared everybody on the planet and started climate change. Listen, you listen to the predictions that they had. Harvard biologist Wald, along with Al Gore, estimated that civilization will end within 15 to 30 years unless immediate action is taken against problems facing mankind. So we should all be dead by 1995 and 2000. None of us should be here. Second, I'm quoting, these are quotes, we are in an environmental crisis which threatens the survival of this nation and the world is a suitable place for human habitation. That was by Al Gore. 3, the day after the first Earth Day, the New York Times editorial page warned man must stop pollution and conserve his resources, not merely to enhance existence, but to save the race from intolerable deterioration and possible extinction. 4, quoting, these are in quotes, population will inevitably and completely outstrip whatever small increases in food supplies we make. Paul Ehrlich confidently declared in the April 1970 issue of Mademoiselle, quote, the death rate will increase until at least 100 to 200 million people per year will be starving to death during the next 10 years. That's from 1970 to 1980. Uh-oh. Amazingly, deaths from starvation from 1970 to 1980 decreased worldwide. 5, most of the people who are going to die in the greatest cataclysm in the history of man have already been born. By 1975, this expert feels that food shortages will have escalated the present level of world hunger and starvation into famines of unbelievable proportions. Other experts, more optimistic, think the ultimate food population collision will not occur until the decade of the 1980s. Neither has happened. 6, Ehrlich stretched out his most alarmist scenario for the 1970 Earth Day. issue of the Progressive assuring readers that between 1980 and 1989, some 4 billion people, including 65 million Americans, will perish in the great die-off. This is from 1980 to 1989. How many are still listening to me? How many are still listening? By the way, in the U.S., starvation death is extremely, in the U.S. starvation death is extremely rare. In a website of annual causes of death in the United States, starvation isn't even listed. 7, it's already too late to avoid mass starvation, declared Dennis Hayes, scientist and chief organizer of the Earth Day in the spring 1970 issue of The Living Wilderness. Peter Gunter, a North Texas State University professor, wrote in 1970, demographics agree almost unanimously on the following grim timetable. Unanimously agree. Scientists unanimously agree. By 1975, worldwide famine and widespread famines will begin in India. They'll spread to 1990 to include in India, to include all of India, Pakistan, China, Near East, Africa. By the year 2000 or sooner, South America, Central America will exist under famine conditions. Also by the year 2000, 30 years from now, from when he's writing it, the entire world will be under famine, including Western Europe, North America, and Australia will be in famine. Let me ask a question. How many of you had a meal today? Are you in famine? Of course not. 9, in January 1970, Life reported scientists have a solid experimental and theoretical evidence to support the following predictions. In a decade, this is 1980, urban dwellers will have to wear gas masks to survive air pollution. By 1985, air pollution will have reduced the amount of sunlight reaching the Earth by 1/2. 10, ecologist Kenneth Watt told Time that at the present rate of nitrogen buildup, it's only a matter of time before light will be filtered out of the atmosphere and none of our land will be usable. 11, Barry Commoner predicted that decaying organic pollutions would use up all the oxygen in American rivers, causing freshwater fish to suffocate. 12, another scientist chimed in, predicting 1970 air pollution is certainly going to take hundreds of thousands of lives in the next few years alone. He sketched the scenario in which 200,000 Americans would die in 1973 from smog disasters in New York and Los Angeles. I checked the records. You know how many people died from smog disasters in New York and Los Angeles in 1973? Goose egg. Paul Ehrlich warned in May 1970 in the Audubon that DDT and other chlorinated hydrocarbons may have substantially reduced life expectancy of people born since 1945. Now remember, he's saying this in 1970. So what is it? How old were people, the oldest people from 1945 to 1970? It's not a lot of math. Somebody tell me. 35 years old. So he's saying if you're born, listen, he's warning, if you're born 25, if you're born since 1946, how many would fit that bill here? Since 1946, after 1946, how many would fit that bill? All right. If you're born after 1946, you have a life expectancy, he says, because of pollution, of only 49 years. And he predicted that if current patterns continue, expectancy will reach 42 years by 1980. You know what life expectancy is in America today? 78.8 years. Are you still with me tonight? D.S. Dillon Ripley, Secretary of the Smithsonian Institute, believes that in 25 years from 1970, that's 95, somewhere between 75 and 80% of all species of living animals will be extinct. I'm going to tell you, climate change is real. I'm going to end it all tonight and tell you what's causing climate change. I'm going to give you, it's a revelation. You ready for what's causing climate change? It's a thermonuclear body called the sun. I'm not sure why they don't understand that. The sun's minimum and maximum causes climate change. We've always had climate change on planet Earth, ever since Earth was, because the sun varies in its output of solar energy. That's in the news. I'm going to stop. That's it. Let me ask the ushers if they come forward tonight for our offering.